14th, 2024. Sherry, can you take a roll, please?
Mayor Miller,
Here.
Vice Mayor Clitus,
Here.
Commissioner Carr,
Here.
Commissioner Colomos,
Here.
Commissioner Dembinski.
Here.
Thank you. All right, and so right now, our city manager is going to come up, because we're going to be talking about discussion of county proposed beach parking. In attendance today, we have Ben Bartlett from Volusia County. Thank you very much for being here today, and I think we're expecting Jessica Frentress.
1 minute out, yes.
1 minute out, that's fine.
So, good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. So this workshop was at my request, following some direction given to county staff to look at really two things: changing the way people access the beach, and then the possibility of paid off-beach parking. And county staff, I asked county staff to come give a real high-level overview of what direction they were given. And so Ben Bartlett, Public Works Director for Volusia County, is here to give his presentation on what direction they have been given. And he will say this, but one thing I want to say right up front is this is not final yet. They will still have to adopt ordinances and fee resolutions and adopt a contractor if the county council decides to officially move forward with this. But you'll see they have some tight timeframes that they're trying to achieve. Thus my request to be here this afternoon, because if the commission chooses to do something with our parking, I want to stay kind of on the same track as the county. So with that, I'll go ahead and ask Mr. Bartlett to come up.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, I appreciate the invite to come speak to y'all today about our parking and beach access program that we are working on currently. So as Kurt stated, we were directed by council to really move forward with some automation when it comes to how we allow people to get on the beach and how we collect the tolls, as well as move forward with a paid off-beach parking program. Currently, the county has roughly 2,600 parking spaces throughout Volusia County's beaches. And those are all free to anyone to park in at any time of day. We do charge, obviously, to access the beach and drive on the beach. But a couple of goals we were looking at, again, get to automation, and the county's goal was to also increase revenue, because right now the cost of the beach is subsidized by the general fund, by property taxes. So one of the goals is they were looking at is to increase that revenue from the beach itself and reduce that subsidy from the general fund. So real quick, we're going to look at off-beach parking. And one thing we learned through this process is parking contracts and toll contracts, the folks that collect the tolls versus the folks that collect the fees for the parking, are really two different things. Initially, we tried to do a single contract to do both. Didn't work out so well. So we split it up into separate contracts. So there's a chance we end up with different vendors for each program. There's a chance that we end up with the same vendor for each program. As far as the parking goes, we went out and we used a consultant, not only for parking, but also technology. One thing we learned through this process is the days of having somebody stand in a parking lot and collect money are over. Technology is a very big part of collecting parking fees. So what we're looking at is license plate readers at these parking lots. Our large lots will have fixed LPR cameras at the entrances. We're looking at mobile LPRs, either on a vehicle or a handheld iPad. For our smaller lots, part of the council direction is every county space along the beach will be paid. So that includes some of those beach ramps where you have 5 or 6 parking spots. Those spots will also be paid as well, and we need to be able to enforce that parking. We're looking at putting in kiosks at our larger lots, so folks who maybe aren't as technologically savvy can access a kiosk and pay for their parking that way. And we're also gonna use mobile payment, and we're gonna have some signage, as you can see here. You can pay through a QR code, through text, and just about any way possible that we're gonna make it available for these people to pay. And one of the things that we're really looking at doing, and this is a major concern of a lot of the folks that live along the coast and the cities, is letting people know when the lots are full. So through the Beach app, we're gonna have real-time status on whether those lots are full, partially full, or wide open, and you can find a spot anywhere. That way, if someone looks at the app, they see where they're going is full, they can redirect themselves and go to a lot that has capacity. And part of the direction from council was to provide a free annual pass for all Volusia County residents, provided they register their license plate. It's a very similar process to what New Smyrna currently employs for their parking lots. This is a rendering of just a generic parking lot, showing the technology, the signage, the license plate readers, so on, and how those are gonna work in some of our larger lots. Moving forward to the toll. So right now, many of you are aware, we have a toll booth and a person that manually either scans a pass or collects money at our tolls, on our beach ramps to collect the tolls. We're gonna use the similar technology we are in the parking. We're gonna use LPRs. And the goal with this is to eliminate the human being at the ramps where we have a low volume of people that access the beach. So we can go to a fully automated ramp where mostly our annual pass holders access the ramp. It reduces our costs. And then at our larger volume ramps, ISB, Dunlawton, Granada, those types of ramps, we're gonna have a combination of automation as well as a toll taker. And the goal is to get folks on the beach as fast as possible. We'll be able to automate the opening and closures of these ramps. So now, in the morning when the turtle patrol goes through, they have to manually, someone has to show up, open the gates, and do all that. With this type of program, we're gonna automate a lot of that. And again, similar to the parking, we're gonna be able to show the real-time ramp status and try to redirect folks away from ramps that are closed, whether it's for tides or capacity and things like that. This is a rendering of a typical ramp access. There'll be a sign out front, open, closed. There'll be some gates, and then we're gonna have a toll booth at each, even if it's fully automated, we're gonna have a toll booth at each location, so that way if there's an issue for whatever reason with the automation, we can always put a human being in the toll booth and collect the tolls the old-fashioned way, obviously to maintain access. Enforcement. Last summer, when the state law came down that basically moved all law enforcement to the sheriff's office, one of the impacts of that was the county was no longer able to enforce parking. Cities can still enforce parking, but we're working with the sheriff's office on an MOU to give our vendor third-party control over enforcement. Our plan is to have a tiered schedule for citations, so if you pull into a lot, you don't pay, you'll get a notice pretty quickly to the registered vehicle, the registered address for the vehicle, that they'll owe X amount of dollars. If they don't pay within a certain amount of time, that number will go up. And one thing we put into the solicitation for this is to incentivize the vendor on enforcement, that they get a pretty healthy percentage of the collection for the citation. And then if we have somebody with multiple outstanding citations, we can also file paperwork with either the state of Florida or adjoining or other states, wherever the vehicle's from, and we can actually have their registration withheld. Timeline. So, Kurt alluded to it. We are on a pretty aggressive schedule. Currently, both solicitations are out for bid, with the proposals due Thursday of this week. Our plan is to take the chosen vendors to council in July and August, and as well as at the same time formally adopt the fee schedule that's been proposed, and then looking to implement both programs and have them go into effect October 1 of this year. So implementation. As As I said, council's directed a new fee schedule for Volusia residents. They've directed off-beach parking and vehicular beach access to be free for Volusia County residents. The one part of that is they have to register their vehicles, provide proof that they do in fact live in the county or own property in the county, and register in our system so that the LPR system can recognize their vehicle. If you are not registered, even as a Volusia County resident, you would have to pay the daily pass for either parking, and you'd be subject to the fines and enforcement if you didn't. Now, obviously, any system of this magnitude that we put in is not going to be perfect from day one. So we anticipate working with law enforcement agencies to monitor the impacts of what this does from a traffic standpoint, from a parking standpoint in the surrounding areas, and adjust accordingly. And one thing I want to stress, and we've stressed to all the cities along the coast, is this is an expandable, scalable, and customizable system. So the hope is that if cities want to participate with their own lots, we can use the same vendor. The cities can determine whatever fees they want to charge, whether it's a day pass like the county is going in that direction, or by the hour, or by 4-hour increments. Whatever a city would want to do, we can implement that because it's just a software situation. And all the revenue associated with those lots would go directly to the city, and we would share the database as far as the Volusia County residents if that's the direction that that particular city wanted to go. So the hope is that eventually those who would be interested in a paid parking program across the beach would work with us, and we would have a uniform system that's not, different. If you get visitors coming in and they're in Daytona Beach and it's different, a city lot versus a county lot, or you're in Ponce Inlet or the Shores or New Smyrna, we could see how that would be confusing pretty quickly. So that's why one of the reasons we went in the direction we did with this type of program is we want to be able to bring in partners and customize whatever they would be looking for their particular city, and then make it work, but have a similar interface with all the customers so they could go to a one-stop shop and park anywhere. And as Kurt said, this is the direction council received, this is direction staff received from council to do this parking program. It is not official until they adopt the ordinances and the resolution to back up the fee schedule and choose the vendors. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have a couple, and then we'll see what else we have. So right now, as a Volusia County resident, I pay $25 a month, $25 a year, which is $2 a month, which I'm more than happy. So I don't feel like it's a big deal. I understand the reasoning behind it. So I guess my question on top of that is, in the neighborhood I live in, I would say 90% of those people pay the $25 a year. Are we really going to make up, doing away with every one of those $25 for everyone that accesses the beach with this new system?
So that's a great question. So when you look at the revenue numbers, because we have extremely good data on our toll collection, the majority of the revenue we get is from day passes. So it's upwards of like 80% of the revenue that we get is from the day passes.
So that means outside of
Or
Volusia County?
people who don't purchase the resident pass, people who just show up and pay the
I think it's $20 a day.
$20,
So.
correct. And so the annual pass revenue was, I think, $1.7 million and change. The non-resident annual pass revenue was roughly the same, in the same ball. I don't think I should have it right in front of me. So the resident annual pass numbers were, because a lot of people buy the combo pass was, right about $1 million and change. And the non-resident annual pass was roughly the same amount. So you're selling 4 times as many resident passes as you are non-resident passes, and you're getting roughly the same revenue. What we anticipate from the parking revenue, based on the numbers our consultant provided us, was upwards of $5 to $6 million. And parking revenue. So that would greatly outweigh the people who purchase the resident annual pass.
And then the next question is, you talked about large lots and small lots. Can you give me a number, what constitutes a large, approximately a large lot opposed to a small lot?
Basically, the large lots include our parks.
Okay, like Frank Rendon,
Dahlia, back, that's where we would have the kiosks. And for the fixed LPR cameras to work, you gotta have one entrance, one in, one out. Where smaller lots would be enforced, like I said, with the mobile unit.
okay. And then the next thing is when you talked about registering, so for someone that owns 2 cars and a golf cart, are all of those, and you're a Volusia County resident, so you register all of those and all 3 of those?
Council did not put a limit on the number of vehicles per resident,
Okay, great.
as of right now.
All right. And then one other just comment I had, it sounds like, and I'm sure we're gonna do a fabulous job of PR on this, so everyone knows about it, but I feel like if somebody came by one day and didn't know about it, I wish we would have maybe a warning before they would get, just one lenient.
There was a discussion at the council when this direction was, it referred to it as a mulligan, if you will.
Okay.
Right now, we have a system where folks, if they're a Volusia resident and they pay the day pass, the $20, and they realize, and they're usually told by our toll, like, well, you qualify for an annual pass, they can bring their receipt in, show that they are indeed a Volusia County resident, and that $20 would go towards a resident pass. The discussion at council was more towards a mulligan, especially on the parking, where if someone pulls into a lot, they're not aware as a Volusia County resident is free. That discussion, the decision to not have a mulligan was the decision at the time. Now, obviously, nothing's set in stone until we bring the ordinance back, but yes, that was the direction we received at council.
Okay, well, thank you, Ben. I don't have any other questions. What other questions do we have on the dais?
I have one, or maybe more,
Yes,
but
Commissioner.
are you planning on charging the same amount to get on the beach as you're going to charge for off-beach?
No, sir. They've increased the day pass for beach. The direction was to increase the day pass for beach access to $30 per day, and then the day pass for parking would be $20, and that would allow you, if you left the parking lot and maybe you went to another county parking lot, the day pass would be good. You would be good at any lot for that calendar day.
So the follow-up would be, you're going to charge the same for off-beach parking?
No,
Any
sir.
lot you, no, wait, hang on, I'm sorry, I didn't finish. Any lot you go to, it'll be the same charge. Doesn't matter if you're in Ormond or, unless it's a private lot. The city, you mentioned that the cities could charge more or less.
That's correct.
Don't you think that would be kind of confusing?
It would.
Okay.
I mean, it would, well, let me rephrase. The cities have the ability to change this system has the ability to change how and how much you charge for your lots. Now, some cities are in higher demand than others. So some cities might decide that they want to charge more. The interface, if they went with this system, would be the same. You would pull up the same app, you would pay the same way, you would just pay a different amount. So it's all, you pull into the lot and you tell it, you would tell it what lot you're in, or it would know, and then it would say, well, it's $30 to park in that.
So Commissioner, though, keep in mind too, most of the county parks are right on the beach, so they would be a premium. The majority of our parking is on the west side, so.
We do have west side parking lots as well. We
Right.
don't charge the
Okay.
same for those.
Oh, you are gonna charge the same, okay.
Yep.
And, in the conversation that I had with our city manager, if we decide to do this too, if somebody, is parking at Frank Rendon, they say, oh, let's go and get a bite to eat, they don't know which one's a county park, which one's a city park, so I think when we have our discussion, it's pretty important that we, do partner with you, or that somehow, if I come back after lunch, I don't have to pay again, not realizing that that was a county park compared to a city.
And that's why we set it up this way, and we went with this type of system, is so that if cities did want to come in and partner, we can try to get this as uniform as possible. And a lot of the legwork will have already been done, and it would just be a matter of working out the fee associated with the particular lots, and then having that particular city decide what they want to charge and how they want to charge.
Okay, and what other questions? Commissioner Purd, anything? Commissioner Economist? No. Vice Mayor?
I do. Thank you for coming, Ben. Interesting, will the vendor pay for the equipment and install it all in exchange for a portion of the revenue that will be generated from that lot?
Yes, sir, that is correct. The way the solicitation is set up is the vendor will be, the way that they will be paid will be, they will submit as part of their proposal pricing for essentially a yearly fee to run the program based on the amount of parking lots that we told them we want this system in. And then they get a percentage of the collections from enforcement. And they are responsible for installing all of the equipment and maintaining it. And we require that they have personnel available during the hours that parking,
For hiccups and stuff,
yeah,
whatever.
to make sure, to maintain the equipment and make sure if something goes down. And they're also responsible for creating the interface as far as the app and the website. And they're required to have a brick and mortar location where people have an issue, they can come in and talk to them.
And that would be the same vendor that also would do the collections when they issue out
Correct,
then?
yeah, the vendor that's providing the parking program will also be doing the collection.
Thanks.
I had one other question, but I think it got answered with the vice mayors. Any other questions that we want to ask? Oh, I do have one other thing, okay. So if I go online and register, is it immediate or is there a verification process that comes through? I guess I'm asking the question because if I go into Frank Rendon Park, I'm a Volusia County resident, I didn't know about it, can I go on my smartphone and automatically within 5 or 10 minutes be
There will be a verification process. You'll have to provide car registration, similar to what we do now with the resident pass for the beach.
So if I have that,
Make that process as quick as possible. I think that's part of what we're gonna flesh out. Part of their proposals will have to include an implementation process, and different vendors might have different ways of doing this. So we're gonna, as we go through the selection process, we're gonna work through a lot of that. I can tell you from a staff perspective, it would be our goal to have that process as quickly as possible,
Okay.
for the exact reason.
exactly, so if I do happen to have my registration, everything you're asking for on hand that day.
Right. The registration's the best because it shows where you live and it has the license plate on your vehicle, because everything's gonna be done by license plate.
Okay, and is that a photo that I take and upload? I just have
Yeah, we won't know until we get the
vendor, okay.
But yeah, there'll be a process for that, and again, the goal is to make it as simple as possible and as quick as possible.
Does anyone think of any other questions? All right. Ben, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I have a follow-up presentation. Yeah, absolutely.
Chris, we're live right now, and if anyone wants to go back on Facebook, they can also see this, correct? Okay, thank you.
So as Mr. Bartlett said, the county's proposing the different beach access for paid-off beach parking. As you're aware, there's 4 county parks, Frank Rendon, Peck, Dahlia, and Van Avenue in our city. We have an agreement for maintenance of those parks, and I'll get into that near the end, but these are the parks that would be impacted within our city limits. And when I first heard about this, when I first heard about this proposal and direction to county staff, I thought, uh-oh, we might have a problem here. If all of a sudden all of the county parking is paid, that's gonna push traffic into our parks and into our streets, into our city right-of-ways. So we wanted to address, and the chief had the same reaction when he first heard about it I believe at a police chief's meeting where Ms. Fentress did a presentation. So this is the impact, this is why we're here tonight, for us to get some general direction as staff of what direction the commission would like us to go as quickly as the county is moving. You know, you heard October 1 implementation date. One, I didn't want our citizens to be caught off guard that, hey, this is coming in our city and it's coming quickly. And two, what can staff do? Because as you are aware, it is going to push it to our parks. If our parks are free and the county is charging, where are they going to park? On ours. But as the mayor alluded, all but one of our parks are on the west side. So Fenari Park is the only beach access we have. And I'll run through all of these in a minute.
With the number of space, we don't have
Yes.
that many yet.
So as I go through this, you'll see, before you tonight, I have a chart that lists how many spaces are at the county and our city parks. And back in 2005, the city created a CRA. The county's requirement back in the day to create the CRA, and the former chief is shaking his head, he remembers this well. The city had to create a bunch of parking spaces, and they're posted, and I'll show you all of those as well tonight. And this also has the potential to push people onto our businesses in their parking lots and onto condominium decks as well. So there's a few things we're asking for direction on tonight, and at the very end, when I get through all of these locations, I'll kind of ask for direction on a couple of different questions. So city parks. We have 151 total spaces in between Andronopolis, Beachcomber, Larry Fenari, and McElroy. But I want to note that Beachcomber, while it has 34 spaces, we have an agreement that 10 of those spaces remain in the interest of Emerald Shores Hotel. And we list McElroy, well, I believe it's 18 of those spaces are on an agreement with Halifax for the urgent care, and also that is where most of our pickleball players park. But if it's free, I can see folks trying to park there for beach parking. So we have officially in parks 151 spaces minus those agreement spaces. If we do paid parking in some of these, we're going to have to address those spaces and enforcement.
Kurt, can we back up that?
Yes.
Is it a gentleman's agreement with Emerald Shores? Is it a contract? Does it have a termination
No, we
date?
have a lot binding agreement, is my understanding. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I don't know what a lot.
It's a written agreement the commission adopted.
Okay, do we have an end date on it?
I don't believe, yeah.
Do we renew it every year?
It's just perpetual.
As long as the hotel exists and needed for that, for the spaces are there, it exists. That's the way it was written in the agreement.
Do you know what year that was, Stuart, or not?
2005, 6 maybe.
All right.
So I know most of you know where these are, but quick overview on the parks, locations of ours and the counties. So we have them pretty much up and down the city, more at the north of Dunlawton, but aerials of Andronopolis, we have 34 and 35 spaces on north and south. Beachcomber has 34 spaces all at the south. So Larry Fenari Park still says Simpson Avenue through the, it's a paper road, but we have a.
Kurt, can we go
16
back to,
spaces. Yes.
I'm sorry, can we go back to Larry? I know a couple months ago we made some agreement that we would allow workers, has that ended, or can you refresh
I
my
believe that's still
memory on
going
that?
on, but we have a temporary agreement for spaces on the north side with, while they repair their seawall. Once their seawall is complete and repairs are done, that goes away.
Okay. Do we know what the progress of that is?
They still have a couple of months.
Thank you.
In McElroy Park, but as I said, I believe it's 18 of these are tied up with the urgent care agreement, and pickleball would be the other half. So, but this could be a real challenge enforcement-wise. Now, I mentioned the off-beach parking that was created as a result of the CRA creation back in late 2005. So these currently are all posted. There's signage there, may not be the best signage, but there is signage that says beach parking at all of these locations. So the first one, Beachcomber. From your aerial view, you really can't see it, so I have an aerial and street view of each of these locations. When you look down the street, that's Ace Hardware to the right of this view. You'll see the sign that says beach parking, and we have spaces going forward there. Even though where the drain is there is not a parking space, people park there all the time.
Sure.
So that's Beachcomber. That's 5 spots. So Bridgeport Road, that's just across from Hawaiian Inn. You'll see we have spaces here. That's 5 as well. Not well marked in terms of actual spaces, but there are 5 spaces there. Bonner Avenue. Again, it's mostly all right-of-way parking here. So it goes forward there. We have another 5 spaces there. You can sort of see the white lines there. Moore Avenue. This one I didn't realize was ours, but along the side, they're right next to the building, in Dixie, there's parking there. And across the street, there's 2 spaces there as well. Browning Avenue. This is an all-grass one, but it is signed for off-beach parking. That is 13 spaces. Obviously, parallel parking along there. Spaces are not marked. Grant Avenue. So we have right-of-way parking again here. In the grass, you see we have curb stops there. It is posted as well, public parking. We do have right-of-way on the, so now we switch looking, instead of east to west, we're going west to east. So that would be on the north side of Grant. There is space if we chose to add more there. Sunrise Boulevard, this one's interesting. We have 10 spaces, but you'll see in the notes that a 1990 lease agreement, I don't know how long this one runs for, 5 of those spaces are for that business. On the other side of the street, we have these spaces that are primarily used as parking for this business, but these are city spaces marked for
They're
beach
marked.
parking. They're marked for beach parking.
What is that business, Kurt?
Todd Surf Shop.
Yep. So, Park Avenue, across from the old Treasure Island, you've probably all seen those spaces. They're frequently used. I'm not sure those are beachgoers or just people stopping and parking and resting there. I saw a lady a couple days ago, I think it was last week, taking a nap. So, but those are marked as well. You'll see the sign, beach parking. Botifer.
Kurt, is Botiford the one that we just did the action for the right-of-way? Will that increase the spaces, leave them the
Yes,
same?
so I didn't include that because he hasn't, when he develops that, if he goes through with the development agreement, that would include 5 spaces on the south side, right next to the building, which would be dedicated beach access. That, I'm not sure legally how we would do that. He's giving us beach right away, but if we chose to do the paid parking, it's on his property. We'd probably have to come up with an agreement. That's why I left that one off, because there is no parking there today. Kind of focused on what we have today. So Botifer is listed as 10 spaces. 10 would be parallel parking. They park more vertical, and they get a lot more than 10 in there right now. But you see most of these are unimproved grass areas, so if we chose to do some things, these are, I wanted you to be aware of all the spaces that we have in our city that are marked beach parking right now. They're signed for beach parking, they're free to the public. If we wanted to do a paid program, we're probably not, obviously from the size, we're not gonna qualify for license plate readers, depending on the vendor. So this would be a mobile app, scan the QR code type scenario.
And can we still partner using that?
Yes, so that'll be one of the questions. I'm gonna ask Stuart to come up and talk a little bit about our current parking regulations and the impact that they will or won't have on our, as overflow and they park on our right-of-ways that aren't marked. If he wants to add.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. So the city's parking regulations that are in the books right now were adopted in 2010, and they were done essentially to enhance and ensure public safety and welfare in the city with regards to on-street parking. So the gist of this summary that you see here is essentially that the ordinance, when it was adopted in 2010, prohibited parking of motor vehicles on streets where a no parking sign was posted, duly posted. So basically, if somebody parked in an area, on a street, or in a zone that was duly posted with no parking sign, that was a violation. It was unlawful to do so pursuant to the ordinance. And the ordinance also made it unlawful and prohibited the parking of motor vehicles in public streets and also in parking lots if the area wasn't duly striped or marked for parking. In addition to that, the ordinance also enabled the city to authorize a local citation system for parking violations, and also authorize the city to appoint a hearing officer for those types of matters and whatnot. And that's the brief summary. It also did other things such as making it legal to park on the sidewalks and things of that nature. You know, they also established loading zone times and whatnot. So in terms of the enforcement of the city's parking regulations here in the city is done by the Public Safety Department, and essentially it's all based on statute. And the Public Safety Department utilizes what's called the Uniform Traffic Citation Code, if you will, for parking violations. I'm not the expert at that, the chief is, but if there's any questions for either on the ordinance side of things or the enforcement side, chief and I will be happy to tag team. Thank you.
I have a question for Jessica before. So I see that Andronopolis and Beachcomber have the most amount of spaces. So Beachcomber, I would think the access point there would be next to Emerald Shores. Is that correct? That would be the closest.
That would be the closest one.
Okay, so
Access point, Emerald Shores, closest to Beachcomber?
Yes, right across the street.
and the closest point for Andronopolis would be our famous Sea Oats, going over there. So I see that they have started their seawall. With that in mind, how soon would you say that walkway would be open to parking at Andronopolis?
Good afternoon, Jessica Fentress, Volusia County's Coastal Division. We are working very closely with the contractor at Sea Oats. They are a good quality contractor, and when they are finished doing their on-beach work, then we are prepared to go in, put poles in the ground, and we can rebuild that walkover, favorable weather, within a week. As you know, construction during turtle nesting season, if a nest shows up, I can't make any promises. We've got a 90-day cure date on a nest, so I'm very hesitant on giving you a date. Assuming no nest, we're looking at 1 week after the contractor has finished their beachside work and favorable conditions.
Okay, so if this did go into effect October 1st, what would you say the chances are? You don't want
It
it?
should be open.
It should be, okay.
I'm hoping we can get you guys open maybe before Memorial Day.
All right, so October 1st seems pretty reasonable. Okay, thank you, Jessica.
Madam Mayor, I have a question
Yes.
too. This might be directed to the county folks, but are there any other cities in Volusia right now that charge for off-beach parking?
New Smyrna has 4 lots that they charge for. Daytona has a couple of lots in their core area. That might work on it.
In the other cities that currently do not, do you anticipate that they may actually do this once the county addresses the
As
issue?
part of this process, we've reached out to all of the cities along the coast to let them know what we're doing, and to let them know that the system would be expandable to include that. I would imagine, as Kurt alluded to, nobody wants to be the last free lot. So we have had some cities that have expressed interest, just as y'all have, as far as participating or going that route.
Thank you.
Great question. Anything else? So Kurt?
So, staff's questions for the commission, really tonight, or this afternoon, we're looking for direction on, from the commission on how we should follow the county, if we're going to follow the county. You could say, don't do anything, we'll just wait and see what happens and what the impact is. Or you can say, follow the county, be on board, look at partnering with them. We could do our own system. We could do our own RFP for a separate beach parking system. Mayor, you alluded to the problems that would cause for citizens and tourists alike. Is this a county park? Is it a city park? So if we were to go down this road, staff recommendation would be to try and partner with the county and use the same vendors for continuity sakes. So that's question one. What direction would commission like us to go in terms of paid off-beach parking? Question two is, you heard Stuart Cruz talk about our current ordinances. Some cities have much stricter ordinances. Paul Waters, one of the city attorneys, sent us St. Augustine's. I believe Ponce has an ordinance that says you can only park in the right-of-way at permission of the property owner. So would we want to change some of our ordinances to be stricter, to give more enforcement powers to public safety? And then, I mentioned the impact it could have on business parking lots and condominiums. Well, that's private parking enforcement. We don't go on, public safety doesn't go on there and enforce that. They have to have their own program. Most of our condos already have a program in place, but if this is coming down the pike, one of the things I'd like to ask is for the commission to give us permission to put a program together to either re-educate or educate those that aren't aware of what their rights are when it comes to towing from their property for vehicles that are there that are not allowed to be. So the chief can't go tow somebody's car off, say, your parking deck.
I had a question for the chief. Do we have a lot of parking issues right now? Do we give a lot of parking tickets on a normal basis?
We do not have a method to issue parking citations other than what Mr. Cruz mentioned, which is the uniform traffic citation, which is no different than a speeding ticket or running a stop sign ticket that runs through the state. I have spoken with other chiefs in the area. When New Smyrna went to paid parking, they had a huge problem and continue to have a big problem with neighborhood incursion, and that is our main concern from this. Right now, the only place that we really receive those types of complaints are the area of Van and Liberty, when the Van Avenue Park, which has limited parking, fills up on the weekends. We get some complaints from there.
And, Madam Mayor, and the reason I asked the question I did about other cities is I spoke to some business owners, and they're concerned not only about the incursion of parking, but that if we start charging parking, visitors might go elsewhere. So again, if it's every city in the county does it, then it's going to limit obviously where people can go. They can go to Flagler or Cocoa Beach possibly, but that is a concern of several of the business owners that I've spoken with. So.
I'll just add to that though that it doesn't seem to have stopped New Smyrna Beach. They bring in a lot of money and people still go to the beach there. But it is a valid concern, absolutely. So having said those three questions, those are the things that staff is looking for direction from the commission on. And there's still, as Mr. Bartlett alluded to, there were some questions asked, and he said, well, we still need direction. We still need to see the responses to the proposals about how it can be implemented, what systems, what technology is there. So there's still a lot more questions than answers.
So right now, remember again, this is a workshop, so this is all discussion. The beauty of this is that we can discuss anything we want and not violate the sunshine. Correct. So this is the place to ask the questions, but I'm just wondering, with the county not having a lot of, they have pretty many, but not all of the answers, are we at a position right now that we can discuss this? What are you asking us
So
to?
my question really is, do you want me to follow with the county and spend staff time tracking what the county is doing, what they may be implementing? Because they're looking at, I did print off the one page, I thought this was pretty important. They're looking at October 1, which will be here before we know it. And that's really what I'm calling the impact day to us, is once that starts, that's when the cars start coming into our right-of-way and our businesses and our parks for parking, because it would be free at that point. So does the commission want me to just wait and see? That's option number one. Do nothing, wait and see. Or do you want me to work with the county, and as they progress in their process, we're working with them about maybe a partnership, so that when they roll out October 1, before that time, we would have to do the same thing the county did, which would be, choose a contractor, ordinance and fee schedules, and us following those things.
Ben has something to
Yes.
add.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah,
speak
no,
up.
yeah.
Just a couple quick things real quick on the parking. If you passed an ordinance, those rules would apply to whether it's a city street or a county road. There's a lot of local roads within the city's jurisdiction. If you rely on signage, for instance, like no parking signs, without absent an ordinance, then it would be at the county's discretion to install those signs. So the city could request, but you see what I'm saying? So an ordinance would apply to whatever roads, state, city, county, whatever. That's one thing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna, those are the things that are gonna take staff time to work through. And my question to the commission is, do you want us to spend that time and energy now, or wait until after the county has officially adopted a program, put it in place, and then we're behind the curve, and then we're coming back after the fact?
And you have to do the work anyway.
And real quick, to the timeline, and I understand the concern in the October 1, the parking program is really, especially on your smaller lots where you don't have fixed LPRs, is really just signs. You're putting signs in, maybe a little bit of prep. And we're giving the contractor an October 1 deadline because that's when our beach tolls expire. And we're looking to implement both. And really, council wanted us to move fast. But remember, the real beach heavy season doesn't start till March, this roughly a couple months ago. So there still is a little bit of time once those things get implemented. It's not the signs will go up for us on October 1, but the real heavy crowds don't really start rolling in until the heavy beach season. So there is a little bit of time there to evaluate or to implement a program once we do ours.
And I'll get everyone's opinion. So right now, I'm thinking that the staff has to put the time in either now or later, one of the two. So my preference is to work hand in hand with them, that you know what's coming up, if some of those questions got answered, that I would want you to work with them so we'd know. But, again, Vice Mayor, what thoughts do you have on it?
Thank you. I wrote down some notes while all this was going on. So I agree with you. I think we should work or monitor what the county's doing, so that way we're not rushed to go ahead and start establishing ordinances, install signage, do whatever we're gonna do. We could actually start talking to the vendor, and they could start maybe giving us a preliminary proposal, things like that. So I agree that we should start now. I had a concern for the reason why I want us to do this and get the vendors uniformity. So when someone comes, there's not confusion. I noticed when you go to different venues, St. Pete, Tampa, wherever it is, and they have paid parking, it's very, very precise, the signage, and the tollway zones are very clear. I would hate for someone to come in and then just leave with a bad taste in their mouth. But my concern with this vendor is, will the fee they want to charge per year be low enough to where the revenue that we take in as a city will offset the cost of that fee? So at least we, make a little bit of money or no money at all, but I don't want the city or our taxpayers to have to fund, and Ben will tell us.
So, yeah, that's 100%. You don't want to be paying more than you're bringing in.
Right.
I mean, you don't want to lose money on something like this. So, what I would say to that is, once the vendor's on board, whatever, if a city, we'll just use y'all's for an example, you would lay out all the parking spaces that you want to go to pay parking. And then and then depending on how many fixed cameras there are versus how many, signs there are versus, we're limiting kiosks to our larger parks. Maybe you want more kiosks, maybe you don't, I don't know. All that adds up. So I would imagine you would get a proposal, and we have numbers that show what we anticipate on a per spot, rate as far as revenue goes, based on the rates that we set. So that would be an evaluation that you all would want to see. And once the vendor provides those numbers, you can make that decision.
And again, just to make sure, I mean, if you do this checking and it doesn't seem like it's going to be something that's gonna work for us until we actually sign that contract, that doesn't mean we have to do that. And I wanna keep in mind too, it was so important when the vice mayor said, the perception. Wanna make sure that, that they know Daytona Beach Shores is a friendly city and, the perception on that. But again, we have to keep in mind, this is going to be free for all of Volusia County residents. So if our neighbors from DeLand or DeBary come to visit us, they still park free. It's only our Orlando or
And that's where the economy of scale comes in, because we're already doing all the work with tracking and registering folks. So in reality, the additional cost to bring a city in would be whatever level of signage, technology, so on and so forth.
And I have more to say.
I'm sorry.
So, with regards to the city ordinance, I think it needs to be strict and very clear, and the reason why is you want to free up those streets on the side, make sure that fire rescue has access to fire hydrants, make sure law enforcement has access to residences, and EMS has access to people. You don't want those streets all lined up with cars because nobody wants to pay. And then I also recall, on A1A, on the west side, we have a lot of unimproved, empty lots that are owned by private owners. I'm curious, when you start working with your staff, if there would be something inclined for the vendor approach them, and they could enter into, because that will produce a lot of parking spaces. Granted, it's unimproved property, maybe just the curb savers and the signage, but that's something that could help. And I've been here since the mid-'70s, and the influx of people, it usually starts on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then the weekday, it's fine. So your off-beach parking will probably accommodate the people that come during the week. It's the weekends where you get the mass influx, and of course, special events and holidays. And that's all I gotta say.
To answer one question you pointed out, the private property right now is prohibited from running parking activities.
Right.
I believe that predates me and most of staff to early bike week days of trailers and things like that.
But to answer your question, to interrupt you diplomatically, so did the city of Daytona Beach. And I remember when they tore down the McDonald's and all those businesses there near the boardwalk, because there was no parking, they did a special ordinance, and I believe Mr. Anderson, God rest his soul, owns that property. And it was not improved. There was no pavement. It was just curb savers and signage. And as a private owner, he made a killing there. I mean, a lot of money. So again, and I don't think it'll be that big of a deal for us because we don't have as much of influx as the city of Daytona Beach does. But especially during private events, special events and or holidays, that overage may work. It may not work. I may be way off.
And that would fall under number 2, a proposed amendment to our parking to maybe allow some of that. But that's direction from staff to,
That one I would want to do a wait and see. I mean, my personal trend, I'd wait and see.
That's probably smart. Yeah, I would agree.
How much usage are we going to get of our city park?
One other thing I want to bring up is, and it pertains to enforcement. The city actually, unlike the county, can do enforcement of parking. So I don't want to speak for the chief over there, but he's probably not interested in it, but just as for a cost-saving measure, or however you want to do it, the city can do the enforcement. You could take that out of the vendor's program for your lots and do your own enforcement collection, if that was your desire.
Sure,
Right
the
now,
chief-
staff recommendation would be to partner with the county's third-party vendor for enforcement.
Yeah.
Or hire 22 more officers.
Yeah, we have a hard enough time filling public safety slots. I don't want to tie them up with traffic enforcement like this. So if we go that way, you know, on face value, it'd be partnering with the county on,
Agreed.
with their third-party vendor for enforcement. So,
Now, I have
Well,
a
let me
question.
get to the rest of the questions, but yes.
So now, if the city ends up piggybacking with Volusia County, our residents would only need the one registration. They don't need a separate city registration. It would just piggyback on the Volusia County's, correct?
I'm going to ask a question now of the county as well. If we have, this would have to be a commission decision as well. If we partner and we want to say, well, they can start at Frank Rendon, but they go to Publix and get a pub sub at lunchtime and come back and Frank Rendon's full, and they drive down to Andronopolis, I think there would have to be some kind of mutual agreement, maybe a cost sharing on that. I don't know how that works, how the vendor would be set up. And I don't know if you've addressed that.
Yeah, so that would be something we would work through with the vendor. And that's actually one of the things that we probably plan on asking, you know, through the solicitation process when we're selecting the vendor. But, you know, they should have the ability to, you know, see who's where and what.
Yes.
But that would be something that we would have to figure out.
And just one more. When, and this is really a question for all the commission, when would we anticipate putting something on the agenda? Because I did speak to quite a few people, and I know they will want to come and be heard on this, and business owners as well.
We'll be lagging behind the county, so they're going to hear it, probably see it in the newspaper, because we would have to follow the county. The county will award a contractor. I'm assuming they would probably do that at the same time they would be changing ordinances and fees. It doesn't make sense to award a contract without changing the ordinances and the fee schedules. So we would lag behind them. So there will be ample notice, especially since, like I said, we'll have to follow the county. We can't partner with the county with their vendor until they have selected a vendor, obviously. So
So this is not something that's to be put on the agenda next.
it's not gonna, it's certainly not gonna be next week or I mean, next meeting, probably would be August,
September, that's what I was thinking. I'd like to, if we could do, maybe, if we decide to do this, a 2025 rollout.
There's a very good likelihood that with holidays and everything else at that point, that it would be more 2025 timeframe. The other thing that if the commission as a whole is saying, let's go down this road, you saw our parking spaces. They need some help. So one of the things we'd probably put into the budget is to improve some of those. Some may just need some paint and better marking and maybe better signage. We would have to look at, you know, some of them were just grass. It's just literally right of way. And we would have to spend time to maybe design and go down that road of how do we improve that and make it a true parking space?
Now, one of the things I think we need to anticipate too is if we're a few months, if this gets done, everybody agrees, but we're a few months behind the county, we're gonna be inundated with a lot of folks coming to our free parking.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, we're anticipating that. That's why I'm trying to stay as current with the county as we can so that we don't get into season and our businesses are overwhelmed or our parks are overflowing and the people that actually want to use our parks as parks aren't able to because everybody's at the beach.
That's right.
And one of the things that I'd want to know when you're talking about the improvement on these spaces, and I think it was the vice mayor's point, how much do we have to put into this before we would see, you know, any money back? So I don't want to put in thousands of dollars.
To Mr. Bartlett's point, for most of ours, unless we decide at some of the few larger ones, put a kiosk or it's the sign with a QR code or the text here.
But you
saw
just
in
said
that
cleaning
presentation.
up the spots, you know, so I'd want to know how much
Some
that
of
would.
that, you saw where it's paved, it might be repainting and remarking, maybe improving some of the signage. We've been talking as staff about cleaning up and having more consistent signage across all of our signs.
Signage isn't that, it's more the spaces that would need them.
The spaces and marking the spots, like over the drain cover, that it's not a parking space, mark that as not a parking space. You know, put the white lines through it or whatever that would indicate this is not a parking space. So,
Well, we're getting a little bit close. Do you have anything else? I want to make sure we
I
hear
just
from
wanna
all of our
make sure
commissioners.
that we're
Okay.
all on the same page in terms of consensus. So right now, I'm
Hear from
getting
the
the impression to follow the county and work with them towards possible implementation.
From this end of the dais, but I want to hear
Yeah.
from the other end too. Commissioner Card?
I got a question. The cities of the north and the south, are they on board with this?
So,
Ponce Inlet, Daytona?
Ormond, I thought the Ormond manager might be here tonight. She said she might try and make the meeting. She's interested in the issue as well. Ponce, I don't believe, has that many spaces that would.
From the feedback I'm getting from the mayors,
And
they are.
also, is it 4 spaces?
Four spaces in Ponce?
Yes,
Okay, so a not,
at this time.
What about the Wilbur by the Sea? The big, that's county, okay.
is that Toronado?
So Ponce, it's really non-impact to them. They already have right-of-way parking problems, but that's more vacation rental issues than beachgoers. I have not spoken with Daytona Beach yet. I'm hoping to in 2 weeks at our managers meeting to speak with the manager there about what their interest is. The folks that I've spoken with so far, we all want to be on the same page. To the earlier point, if you go to a park up in Ormond and then you want to meet your friends down, at Larry Canary, let's have a continuous system if we're going to have a system here in the county. And I say that, but we want to play nice. I know it's always been my direction to play nice with the county and the other cities. So it's not always the case, but that's my hope. If we go down this road, that we all play nice with each other.
Okay, Commissioner Dubinsky?
Yeah, actually, I got a couple odd questions, but most of it has to do with the pickleball. And Mr. Bartlett, maybe you can answer this. Have you thought about any type of extended pass for people, for example, that drive down from Canada for 3 months, or that drive from Ohio for 6 months, and they're gonna go to the beach and they're gonna park in pickleball area, wherever? Have you thought about an extended, where I could buy a 3-month pass for whatever it is, instead of $20 a day? And that's just a question.
Yeah,
right?
there will be a non-resident annual pass for $100.
Okay, so there's still gonna be something like that.
So if you're staying 5 days or more, it seems like it would be more.
It's just a question, because
That was a great question.
there's no question that we have to follow the county. I mean, I can't see any other, I'm trying to think of all the cities and towns, or cities where I go with a car, and there's really no free parking unless you're in a shopping center or a casino. Even the casinos are charging now in Las Vegas, I understand. I mean, I go to Asheville, and you pay parking everywhere. You don't pay $20 every time, but you pay everywhere you go for parking in a city, unless it's in a shopping center. I have no problem with this, other than I'd like to take care, I live in a condo on the beach, and quite frankly, that's a nightmare waiting to happen if there's free parking on the condo, where people can get on the condos without education. Because we'll tow them, but it's not fun.
Okay, so right now, the city manager has direction that we want him to partner with the county, so we keep updated on what's going on, whatever you need to do. I don't think, hope I'm not being, that we don't want to do a separate RFP.
I really don't want to.
Okay, great, okay, all right, so.
And
we're all
again,
in
this
agreement.
does not mean we're agreeing to anything. It's
Right.
just we're advancing this forward, and we'll vote on it later.
Right, okay.
And so you're okay if staff looks at maybe improving and tightening up our parking ordinances as well?
Yes.
Oh, for sure.
Yes, and then definitely that education program will be very, very important.
So there is one more piece to this that is actually a positive for the city, that, so our existing agreement for maintenance for the 4 parks that I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting has language in it for a revenue sharing from the 4 parks. Sorry, did you think I was going to forget that?
I was waiting for it.
So if this proceeds, and, we had briefly talked about it in a meeting we had a couple weeks ago, but until we know, like, the contractor and how that fee structure on the expense side of this is going to go, really doesn't make sense to have a discussion about, whether it's a percentage or a flat fee or how we parse that out. So once they select a contractor and we see their particular proposal on the contractor's fee schedule, then we'll enter into negotiations and you'll see an amendment to that agreement in the future.
I want to make sure I understand that. So you're not talking about right now, we maintain the parks and they pay us for that. That's separate than a revenue sharing, correct?
Correct. So, but in that same agreement, it says that if the county ever does paid parking, we have to enter in negotiations for a revenue sharing portion. I don't remember the exact language, but it's basically, it gives us the right to go to the table and discuss that. The agreement prior to the current one said 10%. It was very vague, 10% of what? Was it gross?
And that was for every one of the parks?
For the old agreement was just 2 parks.
Okay.
So they changed it, I think 2-3 years ago maybe, when we entered into the new agreement.
So that is for all 4. A citizen had told me one time, somebody that's been around a long time, that some of the property at Frank Rendon actually belonged to the city, and whoever's been around for a while, and then we gave it, so whatever we did to the county that said, so right now, if somebody rented that property for the day at church for a picnic, we were getting.
So our current agreement does give us, I don't remember the percentage, but we do get a portion of any rental proceeds. So if they, rent the picnic area or whatever, we get a small piece of that.
So it's all 4 though, not just unique to Frank Rendon?
Yes, but it's very small. I think 1 year's check might have been about 18 months' check was maybe $1,000. It was very small. Am I being liberal on that number?
The only park that we have pavilion reservations on, we pay to use them, is Frank Rendon Park. Post-storm, since this agreement's been into effect, we've been complimentary. We haven't been charging for rentals. As I know there's a discussion about cost, should you choose to move forward in a paid parking program in partnership with us. The clause in our interlocal agreement right now, and your attorney can provide you more clarification, but if we're negotiating revenue, we're also negotiating how we're going to partner together on a program. So there's a lot of room here to find a middle ground.
All right, thank you. If we're done with this, I was hoping we'd have a lot of leftover time. Are any other questions? Could we-
Actually,
yes.
one more for Kurt. Kurt, are you going to be talking to other city managers about this, about other cities partnering? Can you keep us apprised of that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So this is things, maybe we need another workshop, but I'd like this on the agenda going forward. So one of the things that Kurt and Sherry and I participated in was it's a live meeting. So right now, we are not utilizing whatever we have here, and I am the #1 offender. I like all of my paper in front of me that I can write on. But we're paying a nice sum to be able to use this, and everything comes up on that. But one of the things that we can add on to that really entices me to move forward on that, it's called live meeting. So right now, when Sherry is taking a vote, she's saying, oh, now, who was that seconded, who was that? So we would actually vote on this screen. So she would know, so then she'd see who went in first, who went in second. And the next thing that I like about it, and we really don't have a problem here, but sometimes people stepping all over each other. So if you wanted to speak, you press a button, and I would say, Commissioner Quanamos, you were next to speak. So it's just an enticement. We got a little bit of a demo on it, I wouldn't say much, but it's just an add-on to the system that we're currently paying for. So city manager, would you say we should have another workshop to talk about that, put it on the agenda? Because we would, there is a dollar value to it that the commission would have to approve.
Actually, the annual amount is within my spending
Oh,
authority.
that you can, okay.
So the purchase of it, it can be handled under my spending authority, but it is a change in the operational procedures for the commission.
So we would need a vote on that?
Does the commission feel the need to have that implemented? I do think that now is the time to implement it while we have a commission that gets along. Versus if we have in the future, possibility, not all commissions get along nicely like this one does, that it already then you have a procedure in place and a method to control the meeting that's already in place before something, people start getting upset with each other.
All right, so let's put that on an agenda going forward, whether next one or the one after. I thought they told us it would, did they say 6 weeks to implement, 6 to 8?
I think 6 to 8 to implement once we get on their schedule.
Okay, all right, on the schedule, okay. And then the next thing that I wanted to talk about was so right now, we are talking, and we'll talk in our next meeting about a potential charter change. So I thought, what all do we want to change if we want to? And there is a lot, just talking to other mayors and commissioners, there's a lot of them that only go to one meeting a month. So I was gonna ask our city attorney to write up something on changing the charter. In the meantime, she checked, and we only are required to have the one meeting a month. So it would not
That's
require, is
correct.
that correct?
Yes, you wouldn't need to make any change at all.
Okay, so that's something that I want to talk about. In September, we have to have the 2 meetings for the budget. November and December, we're only going to have the 1 meeting. I was looking at either in October or maybe starting in January clean for 2025, that we only have 1 meeting a month. And then we have a placeholder, if you will, for a workshop like this. If we feel we need it, we'll go ahead with it. If we don't need it, then it's gonna be the 1 meeting a month. Because right now, we're pretty efficient. We get out in an hour and a half. Thinking again about our staff that has to stay twice a month. Then also our attorney, none of them live very close, so they have to come for,
Please don't do it for me.
No, what, so.
I don't mind coming.
Okay. Oh, you like coming here. So, so that's just something I want to look at. Would it be better maybe if we had a 2-hour meeting once a month? So that's something else I'd like to look at. And then we've gotten, and I'll talk a little bit more about this when we have more time. We had a lot of boards previously, quite a few, on recommendation from from one of our previous attorneys. We did away with a lot of our boards. But what happens is there's people that come forward and say, I want to get involved in the city. Well, when we only have 1 board, we only have PNC, it's a little bit hard to get involved. One of the recommendations was on our code enforcement, that we went to a special magistrate, and that was an excellent, excellent recommendation. We have a wonderful special magistrate that he's very efficient. We get through it very quickly. I don't personally want to change that, but I'd like to maybe look at, and city manager, was that a citizens advisory board we were looking at perhaps forming?
Well, we can call it, and I'll look at the attorney. We'll have to look at the charter and see what the boards are called. But are you talking about like reviewing of our code of ordinances?
Absolutely, yes. So what would you call that board, Attorney Buss? Reviewing our ordinances, our charters,
Not the charter.
not the charter, I'm sorry.
Not the charter.
This is-
You can, honestly, you can call it a ham sandwich if you want.
Okay.
It wouldn't have an effect on it, but something that, an ordinance review.
Whatever you want to call it, but the point is that I would like to do something like that. So is that another agenda item, city manager?
If you'd like to look at something, staff can work with the attorney and craft some type of board. I'll look at what other cities may be doing in that area as well. I know the Community Services Director has also said he would like to update our land development code
that be?
That sort of falls under the purview of our planning and zoning, but they have pretty busy meetings monthly as well, so we can,
Okay, and maybe this would just be a temporary board as we need it. So if they're gonna do two different things, I would think that's probably gonna be at least a year, if not 2 years, to get through all of that. But I don't wanna make the decision, so again, I'd like to look at my commission. Would that be something that you might be interested in? Commissioner Dubinsky, looking into something like that?
Sure.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, great, okay. All right, so those were the things that I was hoping that we would get to, and at least we will talk about them at a later time. So right now, if there's nothing else, I know I gave Chris strict instructions, we're gonna stop and start so we don't have any problems. And so is there anything else before we end? Any other, okay, all right.